Welcome back to the Adobe After Effects tutorial, Mr. Will. Thanks for rejoining me. In the last tutorial, we talked about the Adobe After Effects interface. All right, we talked about the 5 key panels that you're going to need to know to be able to add visual effects in After Effects. In this segment, we're going to talk about layers. We're going to talk about the timeline indicator. We're going to talk about the RAM preview. And we're going to talk about the timeline work area. Why the timeline work area? Why? Because you're going to spend a lot of time in this particular panel, okay? You're going to spend a lot of time building out your sequence. You're going to spend a lot of time changing the properties to layers, adding animations and effects, okay? This is where you're going to get a lot of the workflow done, okay? So that's why we're starting off with the timeline panel. Once you learn this, everything else becomes a little bit easier. All right, so let's take it from the top. Let's talk about layers, all right? Layers are the fundamental, here's the layers over here, right? Layers are the fundamental basis for any composition created in After Effects. These layers are managed right here in the timeline panel. Each layer, each element is represented in the composition panel by its own individual layer, which is represented as individual bars stacked in the timeline panel. So these layers, if I click on these layers, they're represented here in the timeline, in the composition panel, all right? So if I click the text layer, you'll see an inbound box around After Effects, all right? So if I come down here and click on a layer that you cannot see because it's lower in the hierarchy, you'll just see the inbound box indicated visually here in the composition panel, all right? So let's come back down to the layers, all right? Each layer has a name, okay? Once you create a layer, you're going to want to name that particular layer. To the left of the layer, you'll see an icon, all right? That icon will let you know whether that layer is a shape, text, image, video, or an audio file, okay? As you can see, this is a text file because it's represented by T. My computer, After Effects uses RAM memory to load files, right? And sometimes After Effects can be like RAM heavy. So my thumbnails didn't produce, so I really can't tell unless you look at the layer name, and I named it JPEG, which we all know JPEG is an image, all right? So you look through the layers. I have an MP4, which is a video file. I have a PSD element in there, which is a Photoshop, and then I have a audio file, which is indicated by the WAV format, all right? So this is where you stack up your layers, all right? To the right of the names and the layers, you'll see a series of modes and switches that if you click, it'll add different visual effects and motion effects to that particular layer, okay? To the left of the names and the layer panel, or in the layers, you'll see the visibility modes, all right? This is where you can toggle to turn on and off the visibility to a particular layer. Just remember, if you turn it off, if you want it to be seen, you got to turn it back on. You can lock each layer. Each layer can be locked, and the advantages of the lock layer is you don't accidentally put it somewhere that it wasn't supposed to go, or someone in the team, you do a team project, you don't want them to move that layer around, you just go ahead and lock that layer, okay? In the timeline panel, notice the numbers across the top, all right? These numbers represent the length of the composition sequence, okay? And then this number to the far left represents where the timeline indicator currently is in the composition, all right? So let's talk about a few basic things, all right? The layer panel, or the timeline panel, when you build out your composition, layers are going to be at different lengths and different widths, just because if you want a particular, just say image to pop up and go away, that might only take 2 seconds of time in the composition. So that's why you might see different lengths represented by bars in the timeline panel built out the way you see them built out, all right? So This is where you build out the sequences and layers in any order that makes your timeline work, okay? Your timeline, again, your composition is built out on layers, all right? You can change the hierarchy of where layers are placed within the timeline. All you got to do is click on it and drag, and as you see by a blue line, that'll let you know where that asset will be placed. If you want to do multiple, you can do that. All you do is click that layer, hold down the command key, and you can highlight and select other layers, and you move them around just the same. All right, so as you see, it's easy peasy. Just gotta understand the tools that you have and how to use them. Okay, so let's talk about the layer properties. All right, so each layer property, before we even get into it, one consistent thing across properties is every asset will have a transform property. All right, this is where you can add motion and animate that particular layer. So how do you get to that? You click on a particular layer, right? To the left of the icon, you'll see an arrow indicated by an arrow right here. You click that arrow and it'll expand. And this particular property has a text expansion and a transform expansion. All right, let's just click them. All right, let's expand them. All right, as you see, they have subcategories that you can add effects and manipulate. All right, so let's right now focus on the transform tab. Under the transform tab, you have the anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. All right, you can go through and manipulate these particular properties to add motion, animation. You can really get creative using these properties right here. All right, these are available in each asset. All right, so this is how you get to the layer properties. The stopwatches, once you click the stopwatches, we go into keyframing, and we'll deal with keyframing at a later time. All right, but right now we just want to know the timeline and the layers and how that all works. Okay, so that's how you expand. All right, in After Effects, you not only work with layers, but you also work with time. So just make sure that when you are dealing with the time indicator, when you want to add a specific animation at a specific time, you have to bring the timeline indicator to that exact point. All right, so the timeline indicator is super important when it comes to adding and building out, elements and building out your composition. Okay, timeline panel. Let's talk about these two blue brackets up top. Notice as I toggle my mouse over top, the icon changes. All right, what this does, I can drag this side in, and I'll drag this side in. What this does is this allows you to isolate on a particular segment in the timeline. All right, so let's just take a quick look here. Please excuse the volume. I did not turn the volume down. I'm right in my mind, everybody watch out, cause it's my time and I'm never giving it up, I'm never gonna stop. I'm never giving it up and gotta be top, and I rock, I'm right in my... All right, so as you see, the video looped. All right, it allowed me just to focus on that particular timeline, even when I wanted to do my preview playback. All right, so that's how you do that. Let's take those back. All right. Let's talk about the RAM preview. All right, the RAM preview is called that because Adobe After Effects uploads and runs everything through your RAM memory on your computer, right? So if you have a computer with lower RAM, After Effects will slow down your workflow. Things will take a while to render, okay? If you have a computer with a lot of RAM, then everything should work smoothly. All right, so let's talk about, again, the RAM preview. How do you preview a sequence? You simply just press the space bar, all right? So hit the space bar, the sequence begins. As you see, a red line that was navigating through the timeline. Along with that red line, you see this green bar go across the top. That green bar is the RAM memory processing the images, okay? So by it being green, that means everything is running smoothly. If it's not green, things will run poorly and choppy. How do you avoid that? Okay, you can avoid that by simply coming to the resolution panel and turning down the resolution, all right? Because when you have high resolution, we all know that eats up more storage. We do not want to eat up more storage because it just takes more time to process. So you're gonna be trying to preview an image, preview a composition, and it's gonna feel like it's taking forever. 2 hours later. All right, so you want to make sure that you turn down the resolution during your editing process and then turn it back up for your final preview, because at that point you want it to take its time to process, but you're done at that point and you did not disrupt your workflow. Okay, so those are very key things to remember. All right, so a couple key points to remember from the segment here is the timeline panel allows you to determine the layer order and hierarchy, and it also allows you to pinpoint timing and animation. All right, so remember those two things. Hope you learned a little something. Please review this video. Practice as you go along. All right, practice makes perfect. This is a skill set that is essential if you want to get into motion graphics and animations further. So see you guys soon.